Welcome everybody to episode 60. We're now an old man. This podcast has gone to the third age, although it's not called the third age in English. It's now senior citizen, that's what I mean.
Oh.
I'm here sitting with the one and only Christian Carolio. How are you, my friend?
All good, Juan. All good. Ready to discuss some hidden gems and indies.
Absolutely. We're going to be discussing what is an indie game, what makes an indie game. And I know this is, to anybody who is in the industry or follows the industry, this is kind of a dumb question, and I agree. However, I have seen some talk where some games are being called indies that I think are not, and that's kind of what sparked this whole, inspired this whole episode. But let's begin, slowly, and then we'll build towards that. First of all, just in case anybody doesn't know, I'm just going to read a small definition that I found here in the very trusty Wikipedia about what makes an indie game. Just so we're all on the same page and we build from there. So, an indie game, which is short for independent video game, is a video game typically created by individuals or smaller development teams without the financial and technical support from a large game publisher, in contrast to most AAA titles. This goes on a little bit further, but I think that already gives us the general sense of what makes an indie game.
Yeah, we were discussing whether this episode is going to be us just reading Wikipedia articles until like we go through all of them, or actually having a podcast episode.
Exactly, no, because that can get very, very boring for both the listener and for you. So that's why I only.
Yeah.
Okay, so beginning from that, let's just begin from our general perspective, as we always do, from macro to micro in all these things. So, Christian, what do you think about indie games? Do you play them? What do you think about them in general?
I think that it's kind of like a cool term that I always try to remember, like, what was the first time I think I played an indie game, being aware that this is an indie game. And it was like back in the day, Braid. That Xbox 360 hidden gem that was kind of like a massive hit. And from there, like a few other titles kind of like sparked, and then kind of like, obviously, like I think I played like all the crazy typical indie games that everyone talks about, like Super Meat Boy. What was the other one? I forgot the name. The roguelike.
No.
The one that's a roguelike, but you're like from the people that made Super Meat Boy. Damn it, I'm just gonna like
Isaac, The Binding of Isaac.
The Binding of Isaac. Yeah, I remember playing that one as well. And I think that in general, like they got like it seemed like even beyond understanding kind of like their business models, for me they had kind of like a look and feel, kind of like an expectation of what an indie game should be. And I think that's how it started. Obviously, that the term indie game is not new. People have been doing games independently for a long time. And even something crazy is that back in the day, even like when the Atari days, like games like E.T., which kind of like was supposed to be this masterpiece, that was made like basically by one guy that almost went crazy by making that game. And you could say that wasn't an indie game, but it was just like one man army.
Yeah, that game also has a very interesting history that I don't know like the details, but I think that's the one that only has like 30,000 copies, and it's like very valuable to find one or something.
They
like
literally buried some copies in the desert, and everyone thought that was an urban legend until they dug them out, and they were like, "Wow, this actually happened." By the way, that was definitely an indie game, but it's weird how the term indie game has turned more into kind of like a texture or kind of like a business model, like an appreciation depending on the time. But I really like indie games because it's like it seems like it's where most of the let's say game design exploration happens.
Absolutely, I think I totally agree. Maybe we can put a pin on the ET thing and come back to it in a future episode, because that could be interesting. But yeah, I totally agree with most of everything that you're saying. The feel, the way that it has now become something else than its definition, and that's kind of what I wanted to get into later in the episode. But in terms of my personal appreciation for video games, indie video games, yeah, 100%. I think that the cool thing about indies is that we know that with AAA, we love AAAs as well, of course, when they're good. But we know that there's a lot of money at stake. We know that there's a lot of um, reluctancy to try new things because of how much money is invested, and we want to make sure that this sells. And in order to make sure that it sells, we're going to stick to our guns into what sold the last time. So there's little room for growth other than in the technical aspect, which is always bigger and better and looks better and everything. Exactly. And Ubisoft and Ubisoft and Ubisoft.
Yeah, we
But
have. I think we
yeah,
have enough third player action adventure games.
yeah, and
We
especially like,
might. We
yeah,
might.
exactly. And if you're on the Sony side, it's like exclusively third person action, whether it's
It is pretty crazy. I think that that's part of like kind of like a typical formula, because like the thing with AAA games is like they have everything, so you have to build everything. So you end up like sticking to your guns, like exploring less of what it's available, because like you cannot like really like you cannot really specialize in like one thing. You have to do a little bit of everything, and like you can still make great games. I think that some of the best games that we played in the last years were AAA games, but we also know that some of them they're just boring.
100%, 100%. So yeah, the indies on the other hand, they have sometimes full creative control, which lets them do very interesting things. And even when they are funded by big companies, which there are examples and we will get into them, the feel that they have, I love that you use that word, because that's the word I had in my mind as well. Like, it goes beyond like what literally is an indie, because so we already explained, like, an indie is a game made by a couple people and that it's self-published basically. So but then that's where we arrive in the like where the line kind of fades. No, so we have things that are obviously indie, like for example Shovel Knight. Shovel Knight is done by Yacht Club Games, and they also are a publisher now. I'm not sure if they were at the time that they
No, no,
created the
no, they
game.
were not.
Exactly, but they are now, and they've actually, I think they've done the latest expansions, like they've published them themselves. And they've also published a game that I loved called Cyber Shadow. I don't know if you've
I
played
haven't
it.
played it. I'm gonna like write it down. What is it?
Is it's like a Ninja Gaiden sort of, but
Okay.
like cyberpunkish, but totally pixel art.
I think I've seen it. I think I've seen it.
Yeah, and it's on Game Pass, so
Oh my god! So
yeah,
you
yeah, yeah.
can't I already have it. I
You,
already
you, you
own
have it
it. Yeah,
exactly.
yeah.
It's it's already in your hard drive, by the way. I
Exactly.
just downloaded it.
Ah,
Yeah.
exactly. I'll do it while we're recording this, so everyone can know the power of. I can't because I'm recording with my phone. So
So we have on the one hand we have that, which is not only in the feel but in the definition rise, and then we have on the other end of the spectrum we have Destiny 2. Destiny 2, by no means or purposes does it feel like an indie. It's 100% AAA, but now Bungie is independent, so they are self-publishing. I think they self-published Beyond Light. That was like the first
yep,
expansion that was done by
that was
them.
the last expansion.
Exactly.
They published that one.
And then of course like Witch Queen and everything
They
that follows from
literally
there.
said, "Hey, we're gonna like slow down the production quality. We're gonna focus on certain things. It's not gonna be like the good old days." And people have accepted that.
Absolutely. And I think that, I mean, when I played, I was in the Activision days. I haven't played that much in the independent days, but from what I hear in the community and you guys, it seems like they are better now than they've ever been. So that kind of speaks for
I mean,
itself.
obviously, like I just landed and like I never asked anything out of them. They gave me like infinite content, and you're like, okay, I guess I'll take this shit, type of thing. So I yeah, like that seems like a reasonable spectrum. Just the thing that there are multiple variables. Like one of them, of course, is money. Um,
Yep.
I think we were talking like last time about like Kingdoms of Amalur. Amalur. That it was kind of like this
Yep.
game that a football player was, or like a baseball player. I don't even remember. I was meant to like check out the story, and like I totally forgot. But in my mind, it's like someone was like, I can get a few $1 million. Let's make an RPG. And in a way, that's still indie. That's there's a lot of payroll, or like I don't know, there are like a lot of like self-funded games nowadays. Um, I think that one of them is like from the former World of Warcraft creator. I don't remember his name now, but he blogged me on Twitter. He always says like
Oh,
stupid shit, and like it's always like dunking on Activision. I mean, to some extent, he's right on that one, but also like I don't know, he's always talking about like politics and whatnot. And the point is like he's been building an MMO, but it's like again like completely independent, subscriber based, and people like have absolutely no transparency on what's happening with that project. It seems like it's going nowhere,
hmm.
and again like just another business model or something that is just there. Like Star Citizen, you could say it's just an independent game. Like there's still a studio behind it, but I guess kind of like a team based, not team based because team based sounds like I'm talking about like the game, but like single team developed game seems to be kind of like the flair that I like the most for this when it comes to like an indie game. Like how many people did this game?
Yeah, exactly. And I think that that also, maybe coincidentally, maybe not, also translates to what we were talking about, which was the feel of the game. When you see a game like Cyber Shadow or Shovel Knight, you see, okay, this is pixel art, this is 2D side scrolling, this is maybe, it reminds you of maybe NES or SNES titles, and you immediately in your brain you say, okay, this is an indie. And this is, of course, correct. But for example, I don't know if you know a game that's called Child of Light. Do you remember
Yeah,
that one?
that one
Okay,
was published by Ubisoft, right?
correct. That one was published and funded by Ubisoft. So here we kind of, this would be like in the middle of the
Same
spectrum.
for Rayman. Like the last
Yep.
Rayman games, they were like side scrolling running stuff that you could say, okay, this seems like a single game or like something like mobile or like whatnot. And it was like shipped by Ubisoft actually, like not like they had like they funded like a studio somewhere. It's like this is an Ubisoft original game.
Yeah, 100%. And with that one, I think specifically because that's also like an IP that's very tied to Ubisoft. But also, like for example, with Valiant Hearts is another one that's also from Ubisoft, which also like you play that game and it has so much heart. It has a very like wholesome
It's in the
story.
name.
Yeah, exactly.
And it
It's,
has no microtransactions. You cannot change the skin of your character. It has no DLC.
there's nothing to do. I mean, what do you do?
I don't know. You just pay once and you play the game. What the fuck? And then it ends. Doesn't it have a battle pass? Where's the battle pass for all these games?
Totally.
The Rock,
But
by the way, everyone. The Rock is on Fortnite as we're recording this episode. So that's I would say that's the maximum flex of AAA video games.
I think you're right because what else is there? Like, what's the next frontier?
The paper, like you know, this Eastern, like you need to actually grow careers of people that are bigger than The Rock. It's
Oh
impossible.
my god.
And by the way, I think that is kind of like in the same, like it's really a flex because like the only reason he's there is because they're like we want to put him there, and they picked the character that before has never said a word, and suddenly it's like it's The Rock. And it's so obvious that they were like, okay, we need to find the biggest. Who by the time that this guy speaks, we just need to hire like the most famous actor in the history of the world. And they did it. So I guess like that's one side of the spectrum, and then you have these games like Stardew Valley. How many people made that? In the top of my head, it's like just one guy, right?
One guy.
It's
Yep.
insane because like that's actually like a good game that you would think that it has
Yep.
like a lot of people behind it, not just for the sake of having just more people. It's just like getting things done. It's like when you I don't know, it's like why not more people? You've sold like a gazillion copies. You can tell people what to do, delegate. I don't know. It's pretty weird. It's only like just one person.
That's actually a pretty interesting story in the book, the Jason Schreier book, Blood, Sweat, and Pixels. That's one of the stories he covers. And this guy,
He uncovers him as a pedophile or something like that.
yeah, he uncovers him
He
as a cruncher of
he
himself.
crunched himself. The
Exactly.
ultimate. So he was like, I don't know if I can cancel him or not.
Exactly. I'm trying to convince him to sue himself, but
Exactly.
he's not budging yet. Like
Exactly. Unionize himself against himself.
unionize against himself. Yeah, exactly.
The ultimate conundrum.
Exactly. But no, that was a very interesting story because this guy, he started doing this game, and it seems like this is one of those guys that's like very perfectionist, where he finished, quote unquote, the game, but then he thought of something else that he could add on to it, like the relationships between people and villagers and stuff, and he added it. And then he thought of something else and he added it. And he kind of pushed the release date like, I don't know how many times, but like crazy amount of times. He already had a lot of people that were interested in the game. I'm not sure if it was kickstarted or not, but there was a community even when the game wasn't even out. And he was basically like being supported by his girlfriend or wife. I'm not sure. And you know, like
What a
it's,
simp.
but you know, it's kind of a very interesting story because now he's a super millionaire
Yeah,
and
now he actually doesn't need to pay anyone, and now he's super rich. It's a
exactly.
great game, by the way. I mean, I think like everyone has played it for a couple of hours. I think it's a really solid game. I think that also now you were mentioning that something that is very different from these games is also like the business model, like the early access model. I think it's kind of like a big part of what indie games are nowadays, because the rise of games like roguelike, like the genre of roguelike and stuff like that. Um, the case of Hades from Supergiant Games, they released the game on early access on PC for almost a year. Like for almost a year, you could play just as far as I think Theseus and the Minotaur. Um, I'm not sure if you could face Hades. I think you could face Hades, but you didn't have an ending. I'm not sure at this point, because I like it's one of those games where I was like, I don't want to be part of the early access when I have like the first version.
Yeah.
Um, but in the No Clip documentary, Greg Kasavin, he talks about this, of how the early access shaped the game beyond like whatever they could ever imagine. Like they realized they had to do things like the weapon aspects in the game. By the way, if you don't know what I'm talking about, it's because you haven't finished Hades, and you're just a pleb.
We can't
Sorry,
do anything for you.
you can't do. You have to finish Hades and then come back and continue this. Not just kidding.
Get good,
Get good,
motherfuckers.
get good, get good, and then listen to a new game experience. So the weapon aspects is like you can finish the game with three different weapons. Four weapons? No, there's like six weapons.
No, there's about six. Yeah.
Six weapons. So that was it. That was kind of like the game. You had six weapons, and then they figure out that, well, what if all of these weapons have like three more, I don't know, kind of like gameplay abilities, and each one is dedicated to kind of like a historical warrior figure, stuff like that. And they added that, but they realized like it expanded the game and also gave them a lot of work. But that's something that they developed together with the early access program. And that's they built a gigantic community. Like everyone knew this game was going to kick ass, and then they released it and it was just an instant classic.
Yeah, that's actually as indie as you can get. Like it's one thing to make the game yourself. It's one thing to publish the game yourself. But the third is like interacting with your community to shape the game. That's like 100, like uber indie. You know,
Yeah,
like
Super Giant Games, I think that I'm not sure like if they're still in the, like that's the thing, like double A aspect, still indie. I think like you could still call them indie.
yeah, I think so.
They're just like the games are so good that you might as well be like, this is a triple A game.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
but it is these are, it's really hard to like interact with the community. And some of these people that we have in the list of games that we're talking about, they've done a really great job. And then you have a game like Fest, where the creator was Phil Fish, and it's the absolute opposite of interacting with the community. He was kind of like
Yes.
in the eye of the storm when this whole Gamergate thing happened, and he basically was losing his mind on Twitter, and he just absolutely retired. Which I think that he made enough money to retire once he, because you could like, if you make, let's suppose you make like $5 million for the game, and then you put that money kind of like an index fund that pays like 10% or 8% annually. You leave some to inflation, taxes, and in the end, you could have kind of like a really good salary if you just put your money in the right place and just leave off the staking. So yeah, you could retire if you actually make a single hit.
Yeah, and he's not the only person who's done this because I mean, Rami Ismail, I don't think he retired probably, or did he? But he only made like a couple games as well, right?
But they were not that successful
No, 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 not at that
as
level.
Fest
No.
like that. Like this, that's the thing with Fest. Fest was kind of like there was a point when with the consoles that they were like they had kind of like the AAA arm and the indie arm, especially like from Microsoft and the Xbox 360. And they were like really paying off people, and they were pushing their games, and they were like they were just there, like it was like, okay, let's sell your game. And these games were ported to different platforms, different marketplaces, and worldwide, and they made a lot of money. So I think there's kind of like I mean, it's it's obviously just a handful of people that they have been able to do it, because in the end, you also don't want to be like, okay, boom, I'm done with life. I'm just like
Yeah, exactly.
leech out for the next 50 years and do like that. So I think that, there's some people that they probably banked it. I'm sure, like, I'm trying to remember the name of the guy from Braid. I think it's Jonathan Blow.
Jonathan Blow. Yep, that's
Jonathan
him.
Blow. I think that he definitely 100% has enough money to basically destabilize the cryptocurrency market, if he wanted to. But he's still making games, and he's still doing his own thing, and it's still going to be sustainable because people still look. He he made The Witness, and what was the other one?
I only
I
know
think
of
it's
those
only The
two,
Witness, right?
Braid and the Witness. Yeah, I think that's
Yeah.
it. Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, because when I mean, of course, not every indie has this level of success. We're talking about like the top 1% of indie cases. But yeah, like this has happened, and it continues to happen. It also happened to the guy that made his name is Tom Happ, and he made Axiom Verge,
Hmm.
and he also made Axiom Verge 2, which came out earlier this year, I think. And I'm really looking forward to that one. But yeah, so going like we're moving along this spectrum, which I think is pretty interesting because they're all technically indie under the definition. However, I think the feel is more important than the definition in this case, because there's also this talk I've seen lately, which this one really is weird to me, which is like they're talking about It Takes Two as though that was an indie as well. And for anybody who doesn't know, It Takes Two is made by Hazelight, and Hazelight is a studio. I don't know if it's owned by EA, but I know that the latest projects like A Way Out and It Takes Two were published and even funded by EA. So, but then again, I can kind of contradict myself because I don't think it's not an indie because of where the money comes from. I think it's not an indie because of how the game feels. Because like we talked about Child of Light, that one has also Ubisoft money behind it, but it feels indie, right? Like, so how do you feel about this, like the gray area of the spectrum where it kind of blends together and it's kind of,
So
weird?
it's tricky, but I played for a long time Hearthstone, and it was a game that it started with a small team that was called Team Five, and I think there were around like 20 people that shipped the first version of Hearthstone. 20 people that they were incredibly senior developer artists and like absolute juggernauts of Blizzard. This was the height. This was what I think it was kind of like 2014, 2015, where Blizzard was at the top of their game just before releasing Overwatch. Strong World of Warcraft community and project, and they released Hearthstone as an indie game in a way that it was a small team. They had an idea. They had concepts. There's I think it's Ben Bro that he has a really good talk at the GDG about basically how they did it. Like Hearthstone, anyone that has seen Hearthstone lately, they probably know that the UI is kind of like overloaded. It didn't. It hasn't like really grown all that well. But at the beginning, it was just this box with 4 buttons, and you have like 9 classes, and like the 9 classes were like lined up in rows of 3, and at that point you would understand like, well, what if we have a 10th class? And they were like, well, we don't give a shit, because it wasn't until like last year that they launched a new class. And it was like, oh, what if we add another button? And it's like, okay, well, we will worry about that once that happens. And But at the beginning, it was just a box, and it kind of felt as if like it had a physicality to it that was just incredibly cool. And the way they shipped it, the way that the game first played, their design philosophy, the way they talked to the community, it felt as if that could be just a company on itself. Then it got greedy. It got massively big. They have now like 4 different modes that you can play. Um, the store is just insane. They have like hundreds of skins. They have a battle pass, and I would say like it's no longer an indie game at all. But it's very different how the launch of, for example, Legends of Runeterra was, that had like from the get go all the kind of like quality of life that you would expect from Riot games.
Absolutely. I've never even thought of that, and I love that example that you gave because I've never thought of an example where a game like started indie or indie-ish and then became something else, right? It's kind of strange to think how that can happen. However, in a company like Blizzard, where they are a big publisher slash developer, this can happen when you see like maybe this started like a side project. I'm not sure of the history, but maybe this started like a side project of a couple of people. Then they saw that
Well,
it
it
kind of
wasn't a
took
side
off.
project. The
Oh,
history
okay,
is very. They were very transparent with it, and basically they were like, they had kind of like mild success with the collectible card game from World of Warcraft,
okay,
and they were like, what if we make a digital version of this? And they were like, okay, let's invest, and they did it, and they shipped it, and it was a success, and it only kept growing. But the initial idea was, okay, this is kind of like a thing that we haven't done before, so let's be careful how we fund it, how we launch this, which is something that, for example, Riot hasn't done. When they launched Valorant, they were like, we are the next Counter Strike game. We are the next class shooter game. That's it from the get go, and it had everything. It was like technologically superior to his peers.
absolutely. And I think you've touched also upon something else that is pretty interesting, and I also hadn't thought about, which is the business model. The business model of these games is kind of very important for the definition, even if it's not on Wikipedia. Even if it's not on Wikipedia, it's true.
It is true.
I mean,
Apparently,
apparently.
can confirm.
So, as we've said, like these games, they rarely exceed the prices of, for example, $39.99. Like that's the top. I think that Hades is $39.99. Kena Bridge of Spirits is also $39.99, and they never. I mean, none that I can think of. They never have like a lot of microtransactions, if they have any microtransactions. At least none of the ones in these examples.
So one example that
Mhm.
was kind of like in that realm, but then was like disproven shortly, was with Returnal with Housemark. That people were like, "Oh, this is kind of like the first $70 indie," and then it was like, no, they were bought by PlayStation, and probably like a lot of the funding for that transition from making like 2D bullet hell shooters to what Returnal was funded with the idea that, okay, this company is going to be acquired by a corporation, and they have the talent and they know how to like move to the next level. It was the first time that you're paying $70 for a roguelike.
Yeah,
And
that's true.
that was kind of like a big game changer.
Yeah. For example, the only issue I have is not the $70, because I do believe that I got, in my experience, I got that worth, like no question. However, the thing becomes a little tricky when you play Hades and you realize that Returnal is not a good roguelike. I mean, I think Returnal is a good game. Like it feels very, very cool, awesome, blah, blah, blah. But as a roguelike, it doesn't really excel that much. When you play Hades, it does do that much better than Returnal in the roguelike elements and many others as well. And it's half the price. So it's kind of weird.
But it's so superior. Like that's the thing. Like I think that probably the thing is that maybe Hades is worth $70 because it's. I think that as a roguelike, I've also never played a roguelike that gives you so much without advancing as Hades does.
Yeah,
Like you
exactly.
probably you could just get stuck on the first boss for like forever, and you would still get like a zillion hours of new content every time you go through. That definitely does not happen with
No.
Returnal. Like Returnal is a very punishing game that until you kill a boss, you do not get any new information. Like until you don't go to the next level, and sometimes that information is quite shitty. Like, and
Yeah,
I
I
also
agree.
and I also think that you make more progress on basically on Hades, like the things that you unlock and the way
Yeah,
that you make
100%.
the game harder and whatnot. It's just more fun. I think that with Returnal, it's still the same fucking game. Like when you die, the thing when you die in Hades was like, ugh, I'm not good enough. I need to improve this. When you die in Returnal, it's fuck. Like you did not advance at all. Like you're just dead. Like the only way for you to make like a real checkpoint is killing a boss, and some of those bosses are just absolute bullshit. I think it was the third one that it was just like so exhausting. Like if you don't have the right weapon, you just cannot beat the boss properly, and if you have it, then it's GG for the boss. So I think those things are kind of like what like make me say like, okay, I paid $70 for this. It had a bunch of new features, so I kind of like I understand where the value is, but I don't think that I would do that today.
Yeah, I understand. I understand. Also, it came out at a very interesting time because there wasn't much out there. Well, there wasn't almost anything for the PS5. So it was probably the best time that it could have come out without raising too much flags, I think.
Because it was that's the thing with the launch of PS5, that it had basically had Demon Souls, it had Returnal, and that was it. Like
Yeah.
they were the exclusives that it launched with, and they were very unique.
Yeah. 100%. And very very punishing. So
Yeah, yeah.
that was a hit for many casual gamers probably where it's like, do I have to play this to watch the new graphics? It's like, oh my god.
I mean, all the other games were available like day one. Like you could just still play Warzone, you could still play
Yeah.
Fortnite, you could still play FIFA. Like, but these games that were supposed to be kind of like the new thing, it was like, okay, it's not your classic third-person action adventure. I mean, they are, but they they're a bit different.
They totally kick your ass. So the last game I kind of wanted to talk about, and maybe it's not really that long. It's Kena Bridge of Spirits. I have not played this game. However, when I saw it revealed, I think at the event last year from the PS5, like the PS5 reveal, I fell in love with it. I mean, I'm really looking forward to playing it. It's just that I have like a lot of backlog and blah blah blah. But so this game um also has the talk around it, like, oh, it's an indie, and I'm like, no way in hell is that an indie. Like this looks like a Pixar movie. It looks amazing. These guys from Ember Lab, which are the studio, they come from a animation
Yeah.
background. They've done like shorts and I think commercials as well. So they are like very well versed in the technical aspect of what graphics are and stuff like that. They've never made a game. This is their first game, and apparently they did very well because I mean reviews have been great. However, when you look at the game, you're like, this is in no fucking way an indie. However, in my research for this episode, I learned that they also published the game. So they kind of like flip the indie card twice because it's like, okay, this is an indie. No, it's not because look how it looks. And then it's like, no, these guys even published this game. So it's like really weird, but I think it's very interesting because I love that these games can now exist in like we have a little bit more variety, not only in what's offered out there, but also in how these games are coming about.
The,
What do you think about that?
so we I think we touched about this in like other episodes, but these systems are closed, like publishing a game on PlayStation or like Nintendo or like an Xbox. They should not be like in the same way that if you can build a game for your computer, that you just sell it in your website and you download it and run it. You should be able to do that. In a way, you should also be able to do that like on a PlayStation or whatever. And that is the main reason why we don't have like more companies like doing this. Like it's a very curated market in general. I think that this was a bit refreshing because it was from a new studio. It was like a game that just looked good, and it apparently played good. It got good reviews, and like people were liking it. And it's like I think that's we need more games like that. The thing when it comes to like the business model and the push that a publisher can give you, that if you fail, then that's it for the company. It's over. Like the people that build Biomutant, they flopped. Like the game
Yeah.
wasn't good, and they spent a lot of time making that a thing. Like they really put effort into that, and you look at it, and it's kind of like it looked good, it played good. Like I don't know, like it was just like weak in general. Like and the game flopped, and that could have happened to Kenna, but it didn't. And I think that's kind of like the main issue when it comes to like this business models, because then all those people that are working on that game, it's like okay, we need to find a new job. Or we need to find like a studio that sees the potential and it's like okay, you have another shot, just keep making games because we want to have games. And then it's the publisher that kind of like takes the shot or like has a bit more leverage or decides what to do. So I think that's one of the things. Like it's easy to be grateful that these games exist, but if we don't support them, then they will not exist.
Yeah, I totally agree. And also, this kind of connects to something I heard recently in Alana Pierce's podcast, Play, Watch, Listen, where she's there with Mike Bithell, who is I think, the director maybe of Bithell Games. They made Thomas Was Alone. They made Volume, John Wick Hex, and others. And he was talking about how when you want to look for funding for your game,
And he's
it's
also, by the way, he's also kind of like a one guy, one man army kind of thing, right?
I mean, when he talks about his studio and his employees, he always talks in plural. So I think not, but maybe Thomas was alone. He was alone.
But
Maybe
even for John Wick, I think that the problem that he had, because I do remember like him talking about it, it's like people were expecting kind of like the triple A quality of John Wick, and this is not that,
no.
it's just a silly game, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. And he was talking about how when you're looking for funding, it's like not very easy, but it's much easier to find funding for like $100 million project, like a big AAA project, or for a small indie project like less than 5 million. But the in between, like the 5 to 50 million, that is harder because, and he kind of goes into it, and I if you're interested, I recommend you to go and check that out. He says that the returns on investment for those projects are less guaranteed.
Yeah, it's a
So
problem.
yeah, exactly.
Like
So
because
yeah,
if you invest $100 million and you get 150, you get $50 million in return, which is insane. Because they're $50 million. If you invest 5 million and you get 15, you get 10 instead of 50, but then you triple your small investment that it's otherwise harder to like take somewhere else. But in between, it's kind of like, okay, is this enough, or like are we overspending? And
yeah,
and that's kind of like where I think that our expectations of what a game should be are quite tricky. On Halloween, I think I was playing Alien Isolation, and it looked good, it played good, but I was like, wow, this game's so fucking long. Like, if that game was like 6 hours long, it would still be like it's a cult classic still, but it would be like the best video game adaptation ever. But it's not. Like, it does some things incredibly good. Like, it's kind of like a cult for people that make video games, like for video games developer. For like thing for players, it's like that's okay, like it's cool, worth the IP, but I don't know, like it that wasn't like it's like someone stretched out your experience just to fit the 50 euro price tag in the game.
I agree. I agree. They just couldn't help themselves of. Yeah, well, I mean, maybe they wanted to do something longer, but maybe it's like you're saying, like they felt pressured because they needed to fulfill these expectation of how many hours. But yeah, I totally agree because that game I loved it, but there's a part where you think it's gonna end, and then you realize that there's like 2 more hours, and it's like,
Yeah,
why?
and it's with the robots and the whole thing. And it's like why are these the antagonists all of a sudden, and they take away from the experience, which is being chased by a fucking alien. you know
Absolutely.
which is in the name of the game. If the game was like being chased by an alien and a bunch of robots, then you're like, okay, but it's just called Alien Isolation.
You got a point there, but Okay, man. I think we've reached the end of the of the topic. Unless there's something else you wanted to add to the conversation.
Not really. I mean, I could talk for hours about like
Yeah,
like
we,
indie
we
games,
we can always do that. Yeah, exactly. But we're trying to make these shorter. So in that
and
vein, let's.
we didn't even get political because obviously like the indie games were kind of like the crop of controversy during the past decade.
Yeah. Also, I think we're gonna make an episode about GamerGate because that's a subject that interests me a lot, and I wasn't really present in the industry when that happened. So I would love to like talk about that as well. And I think that's kind of what you're talking about, right?
Yeah,
Okay. Cool.
mostly like how that shaped everything from that moment forward.
Yeah, we'll definitely do an episode on that. But yeah, so let's get into what we are playing. We'll start with
Damn.
you, my friend. Let me know what it is.
Sekiro is done. Lord Kuro is safe and sound. Well, not safe and sound, but like his side seems to be like inside this little girl's. Well, spoilers. Um, the thing is, like, I finished it with the proper ending. It was satisfying years after living it because the first time I played it, I have never played a Souls. I've talked about this, but I've never played a Souls game before, and then I just got to the end where you basically betray Kuro, and I just tried to betray him because I was fucking tired of like getting my ass kicked, and I couldn't even get past Emma and Ishin. So I left it there and never picked it up again. And after playing the Souls games, I went back and kicked their fucking asses. I have to say that this is by far the hardest of the um, Souls games. Like it's just there's no other way to put it. Like the final boss is, as to the games that I have played, which is I think this is the worst. I've heard that the expansion, the DLC for um, Bloodborne has the worst boss ever, but Ishin Saint was just savage.
Yeah,
That one and All Father. I at some point I was just thinking like, am I good enough?
they make you question yourself. They
Yeah.
do.
But again, like amazing game. If you haven't played it, just go for it. There's a really good guy from Fighting Cowboy that helped me a lot when I was stuck in some places. Really recommend it. And also his boss battle guides are really good as well. But in the end, what I like the most about this game is that you can kind of like discover your own style. Like I would see like someone like kicking some boss's ass with a technique, and I would be like, not really my style, and then I would just kind of like do it my way. And then when you see someone fighting a boss, then everyone seems to have like different styles. So that's not something that you can see in like in the other Souls games. I think, like I think in the other Souls games, you could have different builds. Like obviously, you could have like a gigantic hammer, and then you poise through a boss, but or like you just like a magic build. But here, it's like you really need to understand the boss, and I think that was really cool.
Yeah, and it's definitely a masterpiece. I love how FromSoft they seem to not necessarily that each game is better than the last, but they always step it up in doing something. Like there's always something that's like wow, wow, wow. And yeah, I mean we're coming up on Elden Ring, which is the first not AAA, the first open
Open
world one,
world.
and yeah, it's gonna be exciting.
Also, I think that something I'm gonna miss that they should have like picked up for all the other games was the death blows because they were fucking amazing.
Yeah.
Like I think that I'm definitely gonna miss that. I hope they make like either Sekiro 2 or like they reuse that because the fact that when you kill a boss in the other games and they just gonna like disappear,
Yeah.
it's kind of like cool. But here it's just like you fucking rip them open. So that's something I'm definitely gonna miss.
It's so fucking satisfying. I
That's
really
the
enjoyed
thing.
that.
Like it's satisfying. Like in other games, like it's just like you're just slamming the floor and then just like. But here it's just like I think when I killed Old Father, I was just like, man, I've eviscerated the that fucker, and it was incredibly satisfying. The when you kill the monkey as well, I think that's just like it's one of the coolest animations because you chop off his head with a sword that
Yeah.
he has like crossed it on to his neck, and then he just like wakes up and then picks up his head and screams with it. Just cool bosses, by the way. That's the other thing I
Super.
liked a lot. The boss design was just absolutely on point. Even though there were like a lot of like sword fights, each boss felt very unique, and daunting. So amazing as well. I think that's something different with Dark Souls 3. Like it was kind of like a complaint that Pontiff, Dancer, the brothers, they kind of like look the same, or like like big guy with an armor kind of thing and a sword. So, but here it was just like every one of them was just like completely different thing. So
Yeah, I totally agree. So my first game is Neo. I'm gonna cheat. I'm gonna talk about Neo One as well because that's the one I finished yesterday. And when I say I finished it, I think technically I haven't finished it because I haven't rolled the credits. But there is this mission as an epilogue that I found so annoying that I'm like,
let me guess,
fuck this game.
you have to kill all the bosses again.
No, they did that in the penultimate mission,
Oh fuck
in the
that.
ones before, which was daunting. But then we kind of, because I'm playing it in co-op with John,
Okay.
and we kind of thought like, wow, this is intense. But then we kind of figured something out, and we did it, and it was super satisfying. And we also killed the final boss, which apparently is not the final boss. But then they kind of bring you back to London because the game takes place in Japan, of course. They bring you back to London. There's this weird thing just before the boss, they put you in this room with three guys that are not a boss, but they are pretty. I'm not gonna spoil anything, but it's very like fucked up, and it's a very small room, and there's also like two other monsters in the back, and I was like doing this again and again and again, and they kill you like almost in one hit. And I was like, fuck this game, because the thing the thing about Neo is that I was kind of pushing through the one because I want to get to two because I know that the two is better.
Okay.
And I'm like, dude, I'm not enjoying myself doing this fucking mission. I already killed the big bad guy. I'm done. Like I may have not rolled credits, but I just deleted that thing from my hard drive and everything. I was like, fuck this game. And then I got into the second one yesterday. We couldn't play a lot because it was very late. But seeing the changes that they've implemented, then you have a yokai form where you turn into a monster and you kind of fuck everything up. The variety of weapons is truly remarkable. Like
Even like I think in the first minutes you have to pick between like 7 weapons just to begin with, right?
exactly, and they give you the
That's
selection
cool.
of all of them, and you have the chance to test them out, and it's super cool because it gives you like that feel of I'm choosing this and I'm gonna stick with this the whole game. And, like it's pretty
Yeah.
epic. Also, the character creator. I know this is not that important, but the character creator is super detailed, super detailed. Uh, we went into a thing where I was cosplaying as Siri from The Witcher, and he was doing 2B from Nier Automata, and
Okay.
we got pretty close. Like they look pretty similar.
You have to put
And
the
so
screenshots in the video.
yeah, and yeah, so we're two female badasses with white hair. So that's gonna be our journey. And the art style is better. Of course, the game came out, I think 4 years later than sorry, yeah, like 4 years later from Neo. So
Yeah.
it makes sense that it's better.
It's like
That's
from 2 years ago, right? As well.
You know what? I thought that, but then John told me, no, man, that's from last year, and I was like, no way. And it came out March
In
2020.
pandemic, yeah, I do remember that it came during the
Insane.
pandemic.
So yeah, it's a very modern game. I bought the remastered collection, so it's like 4K 60, brutal, and yeah, I'm enjoying myself a lot. I was like yesterday reading up on what weapons I should choose because if you choose two that are complementary to each other, you kind of are more efficient with the stat building and the build. And it's funny because when I was playing the first one, John was kind of like getting into like, oh, should we farm this? Should we do the submission there? And I was like, no, man, let's do main missions and fuck this game. Like, I just want to beat it. But then yesterday, after seeing what the new game had to offer, I was like, hey, man, I'm kind of into this. In this one, we can farm everything you want. Like but not the other one, but this one, okay.
There's also like a guide from Fighting Cowboy that is 100% guide. So check it out because he goes
I'll
into.
check it
He
out.
also has like build guides and stuff like that. So I think that Neo is kind of like one of those games that would have benefited to not launch on the same year that the Ghost of Tsushima. that's, that's
That is true.
something that it would have helped the game a lot. And I think kind of like the same thing for like at the same time it has a lot of comparisons with Sekiro. So
Yes.
it has stiff competition because first you're gonna be like, should I play this or like the first thing like if we go like without like going into much detail, like the first thing you're gonna think is like, I want to play like a samurai shinobi game, and then it's like, okay, should I play Ghost of Tsushima or something else? And then it's like, okay, I'll play. Most people say I'm going to play Ghost of Tsushima, and they'll be okay. And then that won't be a miss, by the way. And then like, okay, now I want to play a Souls game. Should I play Sekiro or should I play Neo? And then it's like, I'm gonna go with Sekiro, Game of the Year, 2019. And then it's gonna be like, okay, now I'll play Neo too. And it's unfair because I think it's more of a ninja gating game than a Souls game or like or what a Ghost of Tsushima game, you know.
Yeah, it's kind of Souls meets Diablo with the whole loot thing meets
Also, the loot
Ninja
is
Gaiden.
crazy. Exactly, because you have like a
Yeah,
gazillion armors and like it's a lot of content. Like it's a
yeah,
very, very, very complex game.
yeah, and I don't know if this one has the same thing, but the first one had so many systems that annoyed me that I just had to ignore them to be able to enjoy the game.
That's
And
the other thing because I think if you compare it with Sekiro actually, I would say that even Neo feels more like a Souls game rather than Sekiro because in Sekiro
yeah,
you're always using your sword and the abilities, and here it's actually you have to have a build, armor, like you think about the systems, mechanics, synergies.
absolutely, I agree. But like, it's funny. The comparison that you're saying, I thought about it immediately because this game, yeah, like Sekiro, I loved it. And I was like, am I gonna go back to Neo when I have already experienced Sekiro? Like, this doesn't make sense. With Neo One, I still got that feel, and that's why I kind of like deleted the game immediately. With this one, the reason so on the one hand, I have the co-op aspect, which always elevates games. Like,
No.
I can't play Sekiro in co-op. Like, that's not happening. And also, it kind of offers something so different that in this case, I'm not feeling like I'm playing a cheap knockoff. I'm feeling like I'm playing something different. And
Cool.
those two things are gonna help me enjoy this one a lot more. And yeah, I'm pretty excited about like going in to Neo 2 and doing things. Yeah.
Amazing.
What's your next game?
I'm picking up now. I'm finally picking up Death Stranding. Like,
Director Scott?
yeah, the director's cut. I already started it back. I don't even know at what point I'm dropping this game. I think I was playing it and then I think I just installed Sekiro and was like, let's fucking go. No, wait. I was playing Death Stranding and then I think Carlos told me like, oh, let's play Demon Souls. And
Oh
I
yeah.
played Demon Souls and it was like it's Demon Souls was a bit too short, I think, and it was like I want more. And then I played Sekiro because it was like, okay, I want to keep playing Souls games, and now I'm exhausted from Souls games. Like I had enough. Like I'm at that point. I don't think that anyone can finish one Souls game, jump to the next, finish it, and like you need to take a break. It's just the last hours of a Souls game. They're just like you feel like
Exhausted, yeah.
it's exhausted. It's like actually like for the last boss of Sekiro, I reached it on Monday and then I traveled to London. No, I reached it on Saturday and then I was like, tomorrow is Sunday. I'm gonna rest. I didn't play it, and then on Monday I had to travel to London, but I didn't even fight the boss until like I think it was I came back on Thursday, Friday, like it was Saturday and Sunday. Like on Saturday, I played like for 4 hours, and then on Sunday, I fucking killed it in the morning before going to church. And I just couldn't go to church. We get the point. And it was like, okay, now I'm done with that. So I'm gonna play Death Stranding, but it's. I mean, it's hurting. Like it's honestly like it's just. I'm gonna try to champion through, just as if it was a Souls game, just as if okay, I need to like just get this through my fucking chest because I don't get it. Like I'm sorry, but I just the fact that you're just walking around delivering packages and it just not is like I expect this game to turn into like a new strategy layer where I'm like, okay, I need like a cart and I need this and I need a truck and then I need a few ladders. But I still keep feeling as if, okay, whatever it said I'm going to do, I'm going to take like two ladders, one rope, and a bunch of like shit grenades and that's it. Like I don't feel it definitely escalates to a level of complexity where it's like, okay, gotta think, how would I do this route? Like it's not that. So,
No, it's
but
not.
I definitely, it looks beautiful. The lore is cool. The cutscenes, when there are cutscenes, they're great. Some of them are corny. I reached the point where Fragile tells you everything is true except the lies. And then you're like, yeah,
Okay.
that's right. That's, I mean, that's factually,
Yeah, it's like,
logically accurate, woman. You know,
oh my god. Yeah, that game, that's a hard game to recommend, because I enjoyed it a lot, but you have to like let go, give yourself into the game. You can't have expectations of, is this gonna get more action, is this gonna be complicated, is this gonna be like fun to strategize. I don't think so. I don't think it ever
that's the
gets like
thing.
that. Yeah.
Like I don't know. That's the thing about the game. Like everyone that's played it, once they played it, they can tell me what the expectations can be. But I think that it's only natural that as they present a bunch of mechanics, you're like, do I need to use them? It's like, oh, you can build this road. And it's like, or you cannot. Like, oh, you might not have to. Like that's how this game kind of plays out. And I think that even the more you expand, then obviously like the cool thing is kind of like to enjoy other people's structure, but the game advances as you venture into unknown territory, and venturing there is unnecessarily far more complex. So but I'm keeping on keeping on, and I think that at this time I can definitely go through it, but I lack the enthusiasm that I had like in a Metal Gear game or something like that.
Oh yeah, no, I totally get that. But yeah, it's a weird experience. But I think that, I don't know, the same way you maybe watch a movie that's pretty surreal and has a lot of cool imagery, and maybe you don't 100% understand what it's about, but you kind of enjoy the experience. That's more or less what Death Stranding was for me. Like, some of it doesn't really make sense, some of it is very corny, but in the end, it's cool. I don't know. I
No,
just
no, that the
liked
part
it.
with the
Yeah.
story or like with everything of the world building, I'm 100% on board.
Yeah.
It's just the gameplay. It's just that I find it that just walking to places is okay, but it's cool. But I've been doing it for hours, and it's like okay, let's just keep on keeping on.
Okay. Yeah, I agree. So I have been playing another game that has been very interesting for me. Nier Replicant. This is a game that I played the original. So this is a remake slash remaster. This is kind of like, as our previous episode about that topic. This kind of falls into the middle a little bit because it's not a remaster. It has more work done into it than a remaster, but it's not completely a remake from the ground up like we've seen with other games. But they've completely revamped the combat. They've added new scenes. I think there's like new cutscenes and stuff. So when I played this game back in the PS3 days, this was recommended to me by the same person who recommended Demon Souls to me. So I trust this person. And this game, I hated it. Like I just couldn't stand it. I thought it was so fucking boring. The music was good back then as it is now, but I was like, I can't stand this. Like, because the gameplay was horrible. I mean, truly, truly horrible. The combat was awful. But he was like, no, man, you have to play it because the story, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, I'm sorry, man, I can't do it. So 10 years later or something like that, here comes Carlos, who he's always on his crusade to get everybody to play Nier.
He's a
And I was
preacher.
like,
He's a preacher.
he's a
I'm
preacher.
I'm a
That's true.
believer of the Church of Nier now, thanks to him.
Absolutely, yeah. He's an evangelist, and we've all fallen for it. So yeah. So
I like how people play the game and then they get the first ending, and some people are already like, "This is the best game of the generation," and I'm like, "Whoa, whoa, dude, you haven't seen shit." Like, fuck off.
100%, and it's funny because this game, I'm not gonna go into spoilers because I think that's, I mean, the main thing that this game has is the story. Like, the gameplay is cool, but it's not like, oh my god, no. I mean, it has a combat that is kind of similar to Nier Automata, and it's fun and everything, but Like I'm completely ignoring the side quests because I know they're horrible. I'm completely ignoring like fishing. I don't care. I'm like 100%. And so yeah, you have to play it. You have to do 5 playthroughs, but they're not 100% playthroughs because you play through it once, then B, C, and D are half the game, which you can speedrun because the game also doesn't scale up. So you're always getting more powerful,
Yeah,
but the game stays the same. So you can kind of speed through it
just
really
like
quickly.
Automata.
Yeah, exactly. And then the last ending, I think it's kind of the same the first half, but then the second half changes.
I
Something
don't
like
even
that.
like calling them playthroughs. I like calling them campaigns. You know,
Yeah,
that's when you see it
I
that
agree.
way, it makes sense. Like you need to play all the campaigns, um, because like you're not replaying the game from scratch. You have your skills, you have everything. So it is. I think it's kind of like a different view. And in some of the playthroughs in Automata, you actually don't even start at the beginning. It's just like they roll credits and now you're continuing playing. Like the guy is just Yokotaro is just insane. That's not the fact that
Yeah.
you need to play the game again.
Exactly. Yeah, I totally agree because when you say multiple playthroughs, I see people's eyes going to the back of their heads like I have to do the thing again, and it's not truly that. Some of it, I mean, part of it, of course, it is, but it's not entirely that. And
Also,
I,
like the new game plus experience is definitely not for everyone. Like I'm one of those guys that I really don't like new game plus experience. Even though in some games it's like, oh, now you need to play the real Demon Souls. And it's like, motherfucker, what do you mean the real Demon Souls? I already finished the fucking game. Like the, like what the fuck's wrong with you? Like you just
yeah,
you can't tell me to finish a game and then like, oh, that was not the game. No, you actually play the same game again, and that's the real game. It's like no.
yeah, this is the only one where I think that statement makes sense. And as I said, I'm not gonna go into spoilers. This game made me cry,
Oh,
maybe multiple times, but what I was going to say is that the whole thing that The Last of Us 2 predicates upon, which is seeing things from different perspectives and everything, this game does that as well. And it does that without the AAA fanfare. I'm
mm,
not saying this is necessarily better. I love both games. But this game did that 10 years ago.
no.
And that is something to be commended.
Violence is bad,
But it's fun.
but it's fun.
So yeah, I totally recommend this game. The complete 180 that I did with this game, as I said, like 2 weeks ago, I was telling Carlos I hate that game and I'm not gonna play it. I'm now in love with it, and I think it's in my top 5 of this year. So
It's hard to put. Like one thing I would say about these games is like it's hard to like then play them again. You know,
oh yeah,
like I think that one playthrough is kind of like enough because then you could also get tired.
oh no, 100%. Any like too much of a good thing is never a good thing.
Yeah.
So yeah. So give me your next one.
So
Although
I'm
I
gonna
don't
play
think you've.
Halo. I'm
Oh,
gonna
you
play
are.
Halo
Yeah.
as soon as we finish this podcast.
I think. Oh, I wish I could, but I can't start a new one if I haven't finished Nier yet.
Burn the backlog. That's burn the
Burn it
backlog.
all.
Destroy the back. Play whatever the fuck you want to play. That's my new philosophy in life. Just, I mean, I do have a backlog of games that I've played and the ones that are coming that I would like to play. But if I just want to like walk out and start playing, I don't know, Banjo Kazooie, then I'm just gonna like play Banjo Kazooie.
Yeah, you're totally right. I just have this OCD thing, but you're totally 100% right. I may touch break my own rule because Halo, I really want to see what it's about.
I
I
mean,
really
it's
want to.
open world.
Yeah. I love that I didn't buy Far Cry 6 so that I could play this.
Let's go. I have nothing against that statement. I love that I didn't buy Far Cry 6. Period.
Exactly. That's a great note to end the episode
Exactly.
on.
That's it.
So if you enjoyed this episode, we uh, ask you to please subscribe, like it, and share it with all your friends. We would really appreciate it. And we will be coming to you with more episodes every week. Check out Cristian Caroli's podcast.
Hammerspacepodcast.com. Feel free to check it out. It's in Spanish, but you probably can learn Spanish and go there.
Of course, you can. And we will see you on the next episode of the show. Thank you for being here.